Hi, this is Mrs. Kidman, and in this video, we are going to be discussing polynomial functions. So let's take a look by starting with polynomial functions. So what is a polynomial function? Well, a polynomial function is a function made up of a bunch of monomials. So monomials are small pieces that involve a coefficient, so sometimes that's a number, a variable, and that variable is raised to some sort of exponent. And so that number can be any number that we want it to be. Oftentimes, if there's no number written, like if we had something like x squared, that means that that number is 1. Similarly, if I just had x, the exponent is 1 and the coefficient is 1. Now that variable can be any symbol that we want. Typically, we don't use a number because that can get confusing. We often will see symbols like x, y, and z. Because E and I represent a type of number, we don't often use those as variables to decrease the confusion that can exist. But that's a monomial. A polynomial is a bunch of monomials either added or subtracted together to be combined into one thing. So the general form of it is typically looking like this. Now we often will write a polynomial in standard form, which means we go from highest degree to lowest degree. Okay, so we're going from highest to lowest. Now, when I say degree, you might be wondering, what is a degree? Well, a degree is the highest exponent, or the exponent value. So we're going to go from the highest exponent, so the first degree, the first number has the highest exponent, all the way down to the lowest one. So that's kind of how we determine what the degree is. So from highest to lowest. We will write it this way. Typically, we talk about some other important pieces here after it's written in standard form. We talk about a number called the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient is the number in front of the term with the highest exponent of term with the highest exponent. Oof, sorry. So what we're talking about there is after we write it in standard form, because it's in that form with the highest exponent to the lowest exponent there, that leading coefficient is the very first number that we see in our expression. Now that's super important because we can use it to then calculate a bunch of different pieces of information when it comes to graphs. So that leading coefficient we want to be able to identify. In this example up here, our degree of our polynomial is n. It's in standard form already, and our leading coefficient is that a to the n. Then the last piece here is the constant term, and this is the one without a variable. And so it's typically found at the end when we're in standard form, but our constant term here is actually going to be a to the 0. So let's take a look at an example here, at a couple of examples, and identify each of these different parts. So let's start by talking about by writing these in standard form and then identifying the degree, leading coefficient, and constant of each polynomial. So this first one is already in standard form. So we want to find the degree, which is the highest exponent of 2, the leading coefficient, which is the one in front of that, which is 3, and our constant in this case is going to be 4. Now let's take a look at our next one here. This one is not in standard form, so we want to rewrite it. 12x to the 4th plus 6x squared plus 4x. Now our degree here is the highest exponent, which is 4. Our leading coefficient is the number in front of that one, which is 12. And then our constant term in this case is actually 0 because we don't have any term that doesn't have an x there. So we know that there's going to be a 0 for that constant. Now let's take a look at our last one here. It's also not in standard form, so we're going to want to rewrite it. And that becomes negative 4x to the 4th plus 6, or plus, not 6, plus 7x cubed plus 6x squared plus 12. Now our degree here is going to be 4. Our leading coefficient is going to be negative 4. And our constant term in this case is 12. So those are some of the parts of polynomials and different pieces that we want to identify. Again, a polynomial is a bunch of monomials or coefficients, variables, and exponents that are added or subtracted together to create this long expression here. What makes it a function is when we graph it, it'll pass that vertical line test. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Please check out the next video in which we talk about different types of polynomial functions, including linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic, and quintic functions. After that, there will be another video in which we discuss different characteristics of polynomials, so be sure to check those out as well.